Welcome to the Building Heroes podcast, where we learn to build heroes in our homes to help our kids be prepared for their life journeys. Hi, I'm your host, Molly Christensen, and I love to encourage and mentor you on your path. Hello there. Welcome to podcast episode 37. So were you like me and you felt totally overwhelmed when you first started homeschooling because there was so much? Or even if you've been homeschooling for a while, you still feel overwhelmed because there's still so much and you're wondering what you're doing? Well, stay tuned because today that's what we're going to talk about, and how to get out of that overwhelmed feeling because you feel like you can just never catch up. So homeschool is not easy, okay? Because you're adding on this extra layer of responsibility. And many days you might wonder, why am I even homeschooling? Which is really a good question. And it does happen to the best of us. Now, when you first decided to homeschool, it's very likely that the reason you started homeschooling was because you had a thought in your mind that you should homeschool, right? And you may not have listened to that thought right away, but if you did make that choice to homeschool, it almost always started with that thought. And I say almost always only because I've never actually scientifically measured this, but with talking to lots of homeschool moms, it always seems to have started with that call to action, that thought that maybe you should homeschool your kids. And you may not remember when that first came, and that's okay too. Now, when you had that thought and you chose to act on it, you must have had some good reasons to actually do it. Now, when I first started homeschooling, I was like, no, I could not choose to do it. And I couldn't choose to do it for a while until I had more reasons that made sense to me to do it than reasons of why not to, okay? I had to balance that out. And it literally did take me 2 years to decide to actually do it. So why did I actually do it? I had what I thought were some good reasons that did outweigh my reasons not to. So I had studied homeschooling, read some homeschool books, talked to some homeschoolers, and I decided that homeschool would be good for me to do because, number one, I could individualize the education and move my kids along faster on that path. Number two, I would have more time with my kids, which I suppose you could see as good or bad. Number three, we would have more opportunities to have experiences. Now, the thing is I did have to actually send my kid off to school first to find those reasons. And what I realized was, I don't think this is as complicated as I was making it in my head, but it was still somewhat overwhelming, right? Because there was so much that I felt like I needed to do to make sure that my kids knew all the things. So once I finally had these solid reasons of why I was homeschooling, that helped me make the decision to jump into homeschooling. But as I started homeschooling, I still felt confused and overwhelmed because I didn't have the big picture of education. So the interesting thing is I went through all the years of public education, learned all the things, and I still didn't really quite understand how all these bits of knowledge fit together. And I imagine that's like that for many of us because like when I'm thinking about the history of world, I just have little bits and pieces here and there, and I just did not see how it all fit together. And that's part of what made it so overwhelming. Okay, so when I started to look at the bigger picture of education, I kind of had to see how it was working in the public school system and how everything was interconnected. But what I really needed to do was ask myself, well, what is it that I really do want for my kids' education? What is it I want them to have done by the time they leave home? And what type of person do I want them to be? And, what is the point of education? Now, if you ask most people what the point of education is, most people will say to get a job and be a good citizen. And that is actually written in the statements, the mission statements of many schools. But I started thinking about that. I'm like, is that really all there is to life, is get a job and be a good citizen? I mean, when a kid asks you, why do we have to know this? Why do I have to learn this? Most of us as parents can't really think of a reason why, because we don't know. And so we just say, well, it's good for you. But we can't really say why it's good, okay? So, not that I'm against getting a job or being a good citizen. Those are good. But I was just wondering, is there more to it than that might make the kids a little happier when I can give them a better answer? So I started diving in, I started studying this a lot, and I realized education is actually a whole lot more than I've been taught. It's so much more than just taking tests, passing tests, getting good grades, doing the workbooks, and making sure I meet these, I get this body of knowledge into their heads or my head or whatever. I realized that what education really is, it's really about helping to prepare our kids for life and to go on their own journeys. It's not really all about making sure they know all the things. And, if you've been listening to the podcast or if you've been hanging around me before, you know that I love talking about the hero's journey because it is a pattern for our life and it's a pattern for our kids' lives too. And if we can teach them that bigger picture, then it's going to help them understand why. And sometimes maybe the information that they're being asked to learn really doesn't apply to helping them go on the journey. But, quite often it does. And it builds their character and it builds their knowledge base because they might need that information sometime on their journeys. So my why for homeschooling drastically changed as I started digging into education, figuring out what it was all about. And as I homeschooled longer too, I started to understand more and more. And so that's a beautiful thing for you, is realize that your why can evolve over time. But it's really hard to get it perfect right up front because you don't know, because you haven't done it yet. And so you can keep adjusting it as it goes on. So I realized too, education can look completely different than what we all expect from our educational culture. So my why, I still like those three things I said, but is so much more. So some of the other things that I was thinking of is because I can really get to know my kids and to see them so much more than if they were gone for 7 hours a day. And I can allow my kids to go at their own pace. I don't have to move them faster unless they want to be. And another one is we're just so much closer as a family. And number 4, and I wouldn't have ever thought of this one when I first started homeschooling, was that because we're home a lot and together a lot, we will see our problems and issues a lot more clearly. They will be magnified, which is actually a good thing because then we don't ignore them. We can solve them and we can learn to be problem solvers together. Number 5 is I can work with their strengths and weaknesses. I don't have to push them on a path that somebody else says they have to do. If that's their weakness, we can adapt and adjust to their individual needs. Next, number 6 is I can be a guide on their journey for them because I'm involved in their lives. I know what's going on. Number 7 is I can lead the way for them as I go on this path myself. And I'm not so sure that I would have been as motivated to make some of the changes in my own life if I had sent them off to school. And number 8 is we can have more flexibility in life. Number 9, we can travel. And because we're problem solvers, we can figure out how to do that with a large family. Number 10 is we can live outside the box and we can empower our kids to live up to their greatness. But as I was thinking about it, those aren't really totally my why. They certainly are part of my why, but they're really just benefits, great benefits and I couldn't really see all those until I started homeschooling and looked at the bigger picture of what I was trying to accomplish here. Now, it's really overwhelming when you think you have to do all the things, right? And so I had to go a little deeper and dig deep to determine what my real purpose was to do this. And so I started to realize that if I could narrow this down and figure out what my one major goal was, it was going to make everything so much more clear. So as I kept asking myself and going deeper, I was writing all these lists, which is great, of whys, because by the way, it's a good idea to write down your why, because on those days that you get to where you're like, why am I homeschooling? Everything's falling apart. The kids are arguing. That's a great day to go look at your why and not give up, because it's so much bigger than just those days. So I started asking myself, go deeper. Why am I really doing this? Why? Why do I want that? Why do I want more flexibility in life? Why do I want to be able to work with my kids' strengths and weaknesses? Why do I want them to have experiences? And I finally kind of just boiled it down, really almost to like a mission statement in a way, but it's my why. And I hope you guys get one too, because it's really helpful. But the reason why I'm homeschooling is because my deepest desire is I really just want to raise good kids who are amazing, who know who they are, who have character and skills to navigate their journey, to move forward on their path in life. And they know they have a path in life and a purpose, and who fulfill their purpose of helping others and serving others with their talents and gifts, and by standing for good. So what it really comes down to is I am building heroes in my home. And when I see it that way, it's not nearly so overwhelming anymore. It rhymes. Anyway, when I put that focus on it, I can always go back to that and just say, if we do this activity, is it going to help them become who they're meant to become? Is it going to help them know who they are? Is it going to help build their character? Is it going to help build heroes? And you can prioritize your choices that way. There's so many good things out there and you want to do them all, but maybe they're not all the best for this kid or that kid or our family right now. And we can say, what is going to be the best thing here to help my child understand who they are and help them move forward on their path? And the other good part is I realize that I don't have to move them on their path. I just have to empower them to move on their path and teach them and guide them on how to navigate the path as well. So, as we start flipping the focus and looking at it like that, it becomes much less overwhelming and much more focused for us. So when I see it that way, that my main purpose is to help my kids go on their own hero's journey with, the character and skills that go along with that, it's just not as overwhelming anymore. And that's what I want. And you know what? I absolutely want them to be good citizens and get jobs too if they want to, as long as they're figuring out a way to provide for themselves. They could be entrepreneurs as well. But it is so much more than that. And when I talk about this, I think most parents would agree that that's what they want for their kids too. We do all want to raise good kids. We want our kids to be amazing. We want them to know who they are and have that strong character and have those skills to face the obstacles in life and to know how to keep progressing and moving and going forward. We want them to stand for good and to help and serve others. Now, when I flipped my reasons to this powerful why, that's when I really knew where to put my focus. So I no longer really had to compete and compare and make sure that my kids were learning what they should learn. And I'm not saying that, we don't help our kids learn still, but it's sometimes we try to force them before they're ready because we're worried that they're going to fall behind. But when they can go on their own pace, it's so freeing. It really is. Now, it's not always easy to know how to do this, for sure, because it's not really the way the rest of the world does it. And it's not the way we were taught to, and it's not the way we're used to either. And so that really is the reason why I started up Building Heroes Academy, because I realized this is a journey, and and for me, it was long and winding. But if I could go and teach other people how to do this, it's going to shorten other people's learning curves on how they're going to do this. And the more I look at the world, I think, man, the more we do need to help others raise heroes, because we need people who are going to stand for the good in the world. So I did develop the curriculum so we could teach our kids together and build those relationships in our home and get those learning blocks and build heroes together. And it's also why I started a membership to support us as a group and as a community of people interested in building heroes in their home as well. And so, because a big part of it is just building that foundation in our homes, a solid foundation upon which to raise amazing kids. So if you're interested in that, check out buildingheroesacademy.com. We'd love to have you join the community. And I also have the free Facebook group as well, which is called We Are Building Heroes on Facebook. So come on over and join us, and let's do this together, because we all know we can use more people to stand for good in this world.
Thanks for listening to the Building Heroes podcast. Can you help more people join the Building Heroes movement by sharing this podcast? More people can find it when you subscribe to the show, rate it, and leave a review. For more help on building heroes in your home, get the free Building Heroes resources at www.buildingheroesacademy.com.